Hello there, this is Ruth from RH West Photography, Art and Inspiration. I'm going to share a tutorial today to show you how to use layer masks in Photoshop to remove unwanted texture from your images. And I'm going to be using two textures today. This is Calm and Open. These are both from my Texture Collection 1, which is available at rhwest.com, and I do also have some free textures over there if you would like to have an experiment and try some out. I really hope you do, because I find it great fun playing around with images and textures. There's all sorts of really great effects that you can achieve. Today I'm hoping to achieve quite a painterly effect with this image, particularly for the background, but at the same time I want to keep the all of the little bits of detail all through these beautiful petals, and the bokeh there as well is lovely. I don't want to lose that underneath the texture, and so we'll be using layer masks today to just take off some of the texture, but just blend it in nicely to make a nice image. So the first thing to do is to come over to the background layer and right click and click duplicate layer, and this box will pop up with background layer in it, and just click OK, and that just gives you a copy of the background layer to work on. As always, it's important really to have an image to work on that is not your original, just in case something goes awry. The next thing to do is to come over to your tool panel here and click up on the top most tool, which is your move tool. Click that to select it, and what we're going to do straight away is just open up that texture Calm, and I pulled it out from the tab, and I'm going to put that over this image by clicking and dragging and then letting go, and it really just carries over the texture, a copy of the texture from there over to the work in progress. And I click on that and that will show you that's where we are, and by clicking and dragging I'm just going to fit the texture to the image, double click to select that size, and I'm going to then pop over to the blend modes and click it open, and you can see that there we are. I'm going to use overlay. There's a lot of different blend modes here, as you can see. Soft light would be quite nice here as well. It's a little bit more subtle than overlay, but do try different things out because different pictures require different effects, of course. And I'm going to use that. It does look a bit full on at the moment, I know, but please do bear with me, because what you can do is just work on the opacity, and so I want to keep that blend mode because it's going to show up some lovely brush strokes and make it look really like a painting, which is something I really want. I think it's going to just make it look very romantic and beautiful, and it's going to help the flow around the image. It's going to carry your eye around this image and hold your attention. So what I'm going to do is keep that, but I'm going to lower the opacity down of the texture layer, and I think I'm going to take that down to about 40%. As you can see, it's getting more subtle. There we are. And but it's still got some of these nice little textured painted marks. It's just adding a little bit to the colour, so if you just see, that's quite a subtle change, but it's adding some nice colour there as well. So I'll just double click on that layer and label that texture. It's Calm, and I'm going to pop on the next one. So that's this one, Open. I'll just drag that out Make sure you have your work in progress selected. Okay, then click and drag, and sometimes my mouse doesn't pick it up, so if you do that as well, don't worry, just have another go. Click and drag, and you know when you've collected the texture because there's a little square with a cross in it and a little rectangle behind it. That means you've picked up the image. Then let it go on the image, pop that back up, and there's the other texture. So this is our second texture, and you can see in my layers panel over on the right that it's layer 1. It's right at the top of the pile, which is where you want it to be when you're working like this. And again, I'm just going to drag it to fit, double click to select it, and come over to the blend modes again. And this one's a bit of a darker texture, so I think soft light will probably be the way to go here. I'm going to click enter to select that, double click where it says layer 1 and label that texture quickly and click enter. So we've got our recipe coming along here, and I can see which textures I'm using, which is really useful to know. But again, the colour's a little bit too aqua now. You're losing some of the detail, as you can see from the beautiful pinks. You can see there's some lovely detail in there, but very often when you start using more than one texture, you start losing detail that you want to keep, and that's why we're going to be using some layer masks in a moment. But to start with this texture, I also want to take the opacity down, and you can do that by hovering over the word opacity and just clicking and dragging, and you'll see the numbers changing down. Or you can open up a little drop down slide bar here, and you can use that as well. So whatever you feel you want to try, just try different ways out and see what feels comfortable to you. That's really the best thing to do, and I think that's quite nice there. So I've got the top layer open is at soft light blend mode, and that's 28% opacity, and calm, the texture underneath, is at overlay blend mode, and that's at 40% opacity. So you can see by using these layers and the blend modes that you start to really get a lot of creative potential, because there are lots of different opportunities to experiment and vary the way that you use these textures, and that's what makes it so great and really quite fun and inspiring. Okay, so we've got the textures in place, and I'm quite pleased with the background. It's just given a really nice painterly effect. If I just show you where we started, I'll click Alt down on the keyboard and click the eyeball on the background layer, and there we are with the layers, and that's how it is without. So the background looks lovely now, although we've lost some detail through these beautiful pink petals. And so what we're going to do is just going to do some layer masks, and what we're going to do is click on, I'm going to use click on the first layer that I used of texture calm, and make sure that's selected, and then come down here to the bottom of the layers panel, and I'm going to hover over this little it's a rectangle with a circle in it, and when you hover over it, it'll say add layer mask. Click that, and as you can see, a rectangular shape has appeared in that texture layer there, and click on that just to make sure that the layer mask is selected. It means it'll have a little extra line around the outside, and that means that that is selected. If the actual texture is selected, you can see that then has a line around it there. So when you're wanting to remove texture and use a layer mask, make sure you click it first to make sure it's selected, otherwise you'll start, nothing will happen. So click that first, and now we need to just select a brush. So I'm over here, and in the toolbar just click and select the brush tool, and up the top you'll get different settings and things depending on which tool you've got selected, and just click open that little arrow there, and it opens up your brush presets, and just select a soft round brush, and that's one with the fuzzy edges, so that's what we want to use for blending, and click outside the box to close that up. And then all you need to do is look at your opacity, and again up here you can hover over the word opacity and click and slide left or right depending on whether you want to increase or decrease your opacity. Now when you're using layer masks and you're wanting to just gently remove and blend in into a background, an original image, you want to keep the opacity quite low, at least to start with, to see how it's going to affect the image. So I've got mine set at 20% here, and incidentally you can also, a quick way of making your brush size larger or smaller is by using the right and left bracket keys on your keyboard. So the left bracket key makes the brush smaller and the right bracket key makes it larger, and that's a really good way of quickly being able to just dart through with whatever size you think you want. It's nice to start getting a nice workflow happening. Okay, now the next thing we need to just do is make sure down here in the colour picker that the default black and white colours are selected. Here you can see there's black and white squares, and to remove colour using a layer mask you need to have the black selected, and that means it's going to take texture off. And all I'm doing is now just clicking and dragging around over those lovely petals, and it's just gradually taking off the texture as I do so. And there's this lovely, there's just a few nice sharp edges there of the petal in focus, and there's some lovely little dewdrops and bokeh that I want to keep in focus there. I want to bring the eye to those, but I don't want to take the texture off the background. So as you can see, I'm just working along the edges here, just clicking along, and just take your time. And the great thing about using a layer mask is that you can actually add anything back on again. So if you think you've taken too much texture off, it's really no problem. All you do is you either come over here and click this double-ended arrow, and you see the white is now the foreground colour, and when you're using a layer mask like this, it means that the white selected means that you're going to put texture back on again. So you can actually go back and forth working away until you get it just how you like it, which is really nice. Again, really creative. It gives a lot of freedom when you're working. The keyboard shortcut for changing from adding and removing texture is X. So if I click X, you can see this moves to white, and that means you can add texture back on. Click X again, and there we are. I'm just removing that texture. And if you look over here in your layers panel, you can see where I've been actually removing that texture, and you can see all these little black and grey bits there, all along the edges of those lovely pink petals where I've actually taken off the texture. And so that's quite nice, but what I'd like to do is take a little bit off of the other texture open as well, because I really think it's just making these pinks a little bit too blue, but I like how it's affecting the background and the rest of the picture. So again, I'll click that layer, come down here and click on here to create a layer mask, and make sure it's selected, which it always will be when you've just made one, but just it's a good habit just to check that it's got that extra line around the edge, which means it's selected. And again, make sure that I've got black selected as my foreground colour, and that means I'm going to be able to remove the texture from the picture. And again, just clicking and dragging around. I'm just starting to bring back the pink. It's quite subtle, but that's what I like about this image, and that's what I like about these particular textures, because they're really very painterly, and they blend in with photographs very well, particularly if you've got a nice blurry background or a nice plain background. Then that works really nicely. It enhances the texture patterns and shapes and colours as well really well. So I kind of like how that's starting to look, and it's brought those whites out underneath as well. And again, if you have a look here on the layer mask, you can see the black there again, and that's the areas where I've removed the texture. And again, if you feel that you've taken too much off, click X on your keyboard or use this double-ended arrow and click on that, and that will reverse the brush's action. It will mean that when you click on, it will actually add texture back on. So you can go over, and you can, with this picture I don't really need to change the size of my brush very much, but with other pictures you will need to just change the size of your brush. Use your bracket keys to do that. It's nice and easy, and just really spend some time going back and forth until you feel you've got the right amount of texture on the picture, so it blends in. You can spend some time doing this. With this one it's quite straightforward, but with other pictures you know you can really get quite immersed in them, working on them, and I love that. That's one of the reasons I make textures and use textures, is it's very artistic, and I really like that. Okay, so I think I'm going to leave it like that, and so just to show you, I'll click Alt on the keyboard and the eyeball of the background layer, and that shows you our original. That's where we started and that's where we finished, so it's quite a nice enhancement. Textures don't have to be, you know, really in your face on your pictures. Sometimes they can be very, very dominant and look great like that. But for this sort of image I think it works better to just build up a few different layers, and just keep that detail and that focus through there like that. For this particular one I think that works best. So I hope that you find this tutorial useful, and I'll be back for some more tutorials soon. Do check out my other videos. And as I said at the beginning, I do have some freebies at rhwest.com and some on my Facebook page too, so please do visit, and I hope you enjoy using these textures. Thank you very much.